Hello, friends, and welcome back to Scaling Stories. Today, I've got some more highly upvoted posts from Best of Redditor updates for you all. Like always, I'll be reading you the posts and giving you my opinions, and I'll also be working on building up my Minecraft world at the same time, so I hope you enjoy. Also, I'm currently only in Spotify's creator program, so watching on there would help me out a ton. Thank you so much for your support. Today's first story comes from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. It was posted by SixOhSixx on April 11th, 2024, and was titled, "Would I be the jerk if I don't go to a personal mastery seminar my mom went to?" I, 25 female, have my mom, 63 female, living with me in my apartment due to the people we used to live with. And then, eventually, she lived with, being horrible to her and treating her poorly, both mentally and financially. It took me months to convince her to come live with me instead, to better herself, but she finally did and has been happier since. A while back, she was introduced to a 3-day weekend personal mastery seminar course. She was very interested in it, and while I was skeptical, I said she should go if she wants. She did, and she ended up loving it, which was great, and I was glad for her. Every now and again, she brings up the seminar, talking about how she thinks it would help me and be good for me, etc. I have tried to keep an open mind, but I remain very skeptical of this whole thing, as it's supposedly an interactive course that is meant to change your way of thinking about things. That being said, she's not allowed to tell anyone what actually happens at the seminar. No one is. It's part of the rule of the place. So me, being paranoid and skeptical, as I've learned to be, doesn't trust it, and I've expressed this. My mom has been understanding of that fact. Still, though, she continues to bring it up now and again. A few days ago, while shopping, we saw one of my mom's friends, Julie, 60s, female, fake name, and they got to talking about the course, which they have both gone to. They both really kept encouraging me to go, and I expressed discomfort at that, and they said they understood, and I could go when/if I'm ready. I thought it was finally over with. Yesterday, my mom suddenly sprung on me that Julie has received an anonymous donation to sponsor someone to go to the seminar this weekend. It cost $995 to sign up, and Julie wanted to sponsor me. Julie's husband even offered to use his hotel points to get me a free room, so I'd be able to go for totally free. I felt so uncomfortable and didn't know what to do. I had a very long talk with my mom about how I feel extremely pressured to do this thing I really don't think I want to do, and she seemed receptive and understanding. But now I feel like I'll be a jerk if I don't accept an extremely generous offer, despite the fact that I'm uncomfortable. My mom has given Julie's husband my number, and he plans to call me and talk to me about the seminar, and I really don't even want to have the conversation. I'm trying to have an open mind, but I really don't like the idea at all. I feel very forced into this situation, despite my mom saying I don't have to go. So, would I be the jerk here? Edit, because I forgot to add, friend opinions are insanely mixed. Some say I should go, some say I shouldn't. Some say it would be good to get away. Some say it feels effed up they put me into this position. Some say I'm a jerk if I don't go, and I don't know anymore. Edit 2. I know I literally just effing posted this, but Julie's husband just texted me, sending me details on the hotel, because he just used his points to book me a free hotel room. I'm literally gonna cry, lol. Scaling Stories Corner. Yo, instantly, I'm pretty sure this is like a pyramid scheme of sorts. It's like, oh, congrats, you're a member. It's your goal to recruit 2 more members. And then it's those 2 members' goal to recruit 2 more members type of thing, you know? And this unfortunately works on like a lot of old people. But it's not just old people. Plenty of young people fall for it too if it's like their first time encountering this kind of scheme. And the fact that Julie's husband just already booked a hotel room without OP confirming if she wanted to go or not is just like, yikes. Like, how freaking pushy are these people? I don't even understand what could be possibly so enticing in like a supposed personal mastery seminar that would make you think like you've struck gold and you're ascending to the next dimension of human life. That makes you like so much better and like you need to get so many more other people in this. Like, wow, you've done so much self-development that you can't talk about it to anyone else. It's like, huh? What? It's like forbidden nectar and you're not allowed to share it? Is that what this is? Because this is like sort of reminding me of like how scammers, like sometimes they call elderly people to get them to withdraw money from their bank. And like they actively coach them to make sure they don't tell them anything about the phone call from the scammer. It's like, don't tell anyone what we discussed. It's very important that you don't do that. type of thing, you know? Now, here are some of the top/relevant comments from the original post. Commenter 1 says, "Sounds BS to me." And then this commenter linked a Reddit thread that goes back 8 years that was titled, "Clemmer and Associates, Personal Mastery, What Fresh Hell is this?" OP says, "Wait, this is the exact course." Commenter 2 says, "Yeah, read this comment on there. Sorry for the late response. I don't really frequent this sub, but it just so happened I got reminded of when I got convinced to go to a meeting of theirs a few years ago and thought I'd do a search here for fun to see if there was anything new about them. The wife of my family's pediatrician, who is ludicrously respected around town and still is, and sort of a family friend, is some degree of coach for Clemmer and Associates and was asking my dad if he would be interested in a weeknight seminar. My dad, not knowing any better and being polite, said he would be out of town. True, but would see if I would be interested. I was in a less than good job at the time and was struggling in my career development. I said sure. Doctor's wife calls me up to give me their sales pitch about how much the program has helped her and her family, yada yada. I figured, what would be the harm in an evening seminar probably about leadership in the workplace, etiquette, your standard work/life improvement stuff. I paid $20 and went. It was actually pretty well attended and in the ballroom of a hotel. I say about the ballpark, about 75 or so attendees. I even see some parents of friends of my siblings. It starts off pretty normal. Just says your standard things about self-reflection, bettering yourself, and this program can help you get there. It also goes into the whole life cycle of the program. This night was step 1. Then there was a couple of weekend conferences, then capping off with a week-long training to finish the program, at which point you can become one of the coaches like Doctor's wife was. We do some icebreaker things. If I remember right, it was just introduce yourself to 3 people. Then they start talking about the line of books the company had for sale and more of the same promises of what the program can do. My enthusiasm is starting to fade. Then the presenter said something along the lines of, "So, as we reach the end of the first hour, consider where you are now as we move into the next 2 hours of the introduction of our program." Strike 1. It is a weeknight, and I'm still in my work outfit. I'm not getting home at 9 o'clock unless this is worth my time. I should add, there was nothing in advance that said this seminar would be 3 hours long. Beneath the chair is a pamphlet about the program, and attached is an order form. In very, very tiny print, I see that the cost of the full program, from tonight to the full week event, would tally close to $16,000. I'm assuming, and frankly hoping, that includes lodging and meals. But still. But I'm the type of person that would sit through a presentation of the types of grass and their growing habits for 3 hours if it had good intentions. Plus, I wanted to be polite, even though I was thoroughly convinced that this wasn't my bag. The tone of speech turns slightly and asks you to examine yourself. What did you think were the problems in your life? Are you doing anything to address them? What are your hopes and aspirations? Discuss your dreams with the person sitting next to you. I took one look at the middle-aged lady sitting next to me, just kind of muttered out an "excuse me," and walked out. Not doing that. Something's come up. I'm late for a thing that happens to not be in this building. Part of it was that I wasn't exactly in the best spot of my life and my dreams were being reassessed. Part of it was that I'm sure as hell not discussing that with a stranger. With that wound picked at, I left feeling kind of miserable, out a perfectly good $20, and with no new skills to boot. I did some homework later on the company and found that this is how their whole system works. Hour 1 is the introduction. Hour 2, you reflect on everything wrong with your life. Hour 3 is a taste of how you, through their magical program, can fix it. Worse still, some sources I was reading up on encourage their program in place of legitimate therapy treatments. So, to answer your question, there's no physical product. It's about being coached and then turning around and coaching others, which, compared to MLM standards, might even be worse in comparison. Might there be some legitimate ideas in there? Sure, but where I work now will send you to professional development things at your request, will in some cases cover the costs, and even pay your normal wage while you attend. Those programs probably teach those same lessons without 3 hours of teardown/build-up. Oh well, live and learn. Everyone steps into an Amway meeting at some point, but my outright irritation at this company came later. Doctor of Wife shoots me a quick message saying that she was sorry I couldn't stay for the full program and that she would leave a free copy of my book in the mailbox. Alright, fine. It shows up in my mailbox and I never touch it. I get a call a few weeks later from another coach rep. which, as an aside, I was working in the legal field, and Clemmer and Associates sounds exactly like 75% of the places I was applying for jobs at, which is why I didn't immediately hang up. Wanting to touch base because I had attended their seminar, I kind of listened, planning on letting her down gently, when she said, "Wife of doctor said you loved the free book though." Okay, nope. Do not put words in my mouth. I'm obviously heated and say, "Actually, I did not enjoy the book, and do not contact me further." She apologizes and hangs up. Doctor's wife texts me, "What timing?" saying that she was misinformed and that I would be removed from their list. I asked that any family members of mine that have been added to their information be removed as well. A few months later, I get a similar sales-esque phone call, so I've been clearly lied to. I got nasty on the phone, which I emphasize never happens, and I haven't heard anything since. So, to put it simply, these guys are hacks. If you want to be a better person, there are so many great ways you can do that for free. I feel good volunteering, for instance. On the other hand, if you need therapy, go get some therapy. They aren't talked about much online, but these guys are, at best, way too expensive life coaches and have drunken too much of their own Kool-Aid for their own good. At worst, they are preying on vulnerable people for many of thousands of dollars. I'd say scam/MLM/preying on the vulnerable. Don't go unless you actually want to join this. There are many better, healthier, and cheaper ways of gaining personal mastery. Opie says, "Thank you for this. Looks like Mom and I are gonna have a very, very long and extensive talk when I get home. This is, by far, the worst scam she has fallen for. I cannot believe I haven't looked into this sooner." Update 3 months later. My update wasn't improved in Am I the Jerk from a few months ago, and I wanted to share it here instead. Here's what I originally put in the update that wasn't approved. In my previous post, I detailed how my mom went to a personal mastery course, and she wanted me to do the same. I went home and had a long talk with my mom. She was very resistant at first, but ultimately settled down and just listened. She asked a few questions here and there, and I answered to the best of my ability. I explained everything and laid it out on the table. I shared the testimonials I could find from real people who described exactly what happened during those seminars and how they got screwed over by it. She couldn't believe it. She started to cry. She felt upset and betrayed, and she asked me, how could she be so stupid? I had to calmly explain to her that she wasn't stupid, that she was preyed upon by people she could trust while she was in a vulnerable state. She seemed to understand after I explained how they almost did the same to me while I was also in a vulnerable state. More talking, and I came to find out that the people who turned her onto the idea of going to the seminar herself before were Julie and her husband. I described to her in vivid detail how they would go about this, how they would start by saying how it changed their life, then have someone call you, then have someone pitch it to you over the phone, until you finally caved, spent $1,000, and went. Her jaw seemed to drop to the floor, because that was what she experienced. After talking for a while, I later learned that Julie and her husband were begging my mom to come on Sunday of the weekend I was supposed to go. After digging into this more, I think they may have been planning to start trying to bring her into the side of pulling people into the cult-like organization. She didn't go, but didn't want to believe that Julie and her husband were a part of this, and wanted to believe they were good people who didn't really know what they were doing. I was once again skeptical, but I told her they are not my friends, and I will allow her to handle it accordingly. She understood, and while not revealing that she knew it was a scam, has since tried to text or call Julie. She never returns her calls or texts. She's ghosted my mom. I think that was one of the bigger nails in the coffin for her. U/SilentCoffee7292 had pointed out a show by the name of The Vow on HBO. They explained how it was a documentary of a similar sounding cult and that it may be worth making her sit down and watch it. After our long talk, I made her watch. She stared at the screen in horror for the first episode I watched with her. She told me in a trembling voice that this was the exact seminar she'd gone to, just with a few small details changed. That documentary details another company that, in the end, was revealed to be a sex cult. It opened my mother's eyes and mine. So that's what happened. My mom accidentally fell for an MLM cult and was betrayed by her friends and almost betrayed me while she was at it. Julie and her husband never contacted her and me again. Mom still thinks about it sometimes, but I noticed the things she had from her exercises from the seminar that she used to hang on her wall are missing. I feel bad for her, but I'm just glad I got her out of there when I did. I hope this was a satisfying update. Thank you all to the Redditors from my first post who helped me find out that Clemners and Associates was an awful scam and helped me break my mother away from this awful thing. I appreciate you immensely. Thank you. Scaling Stories Corner. Well, thankfully, OP was able to get her mom out of the scam before further damage was done. Unfortunately, so many more people every day get roped into these scams from like various ages. And there's not really a lot you can do except learn about how to spot them and then try your best to prevent other people from falling for them. And these people are in it for the long game. My friend almost got roped into one before. Well, he didn't get almost roped into one. Like he already knows what it is, but he got roped into a conversation for one before. Like he got invited out to like a breakfast brunch sort of thing where he thought he was like meeting like a chill new friend. And he previously met this guy on like a hiking trail and thought that they shared like a lot of common interests. And you know, like the usual, right? They just meet and like they talk a bit and stuff like that. Gets invited out like, oh, hey, let's go get food and stuff like that. But when he gets to the breakfast, it turns into like a complete sales pitch type of conversation to like being your own boss man type of thing. This wasn't the specific type of scam that OP faced in her posts and update, but they're all kind of the same, sort of. Okay, friends, so that concludes our first story of the day. Next up, we have a story from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. It was posted by ACFF on June 1st, 2019, and was titled, CEO Didn't Understand What My Department Did, Apparently. Some backstory. I was a general troubleshooter for my company. My job involved a lot of traveling to different clients we support. My area of work is Ontario, Canada, where I am based out of, and some of the nearby states in the United States: New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Pennsylvania. I did most of my traveling by car, since my schedule can change quite quickly and flying can become very expensive. I had one colleague who is technically my subordinate, but we have a very good working relationship and would often handle calls independently of each other, only checking in by phone once a week and in person once a month / when necessary. A little over a year ago, I got an email calling me to the head office in New York City for a meeting with the CEO and the board of directors regarding my job. I checked with my colleague, and he got the same email. So, we made our travel plans and met in New York City the following week. We had dinner together the night before our meeting and couldn't figure out between us what the issue was about. It's rare to get summoned to the head office and more rare for things to be so vague. When we went into the meeting the next day, we were informed that the company was dividing our department between the US and Canada, and there would be a new person to deal with the US clients, and we were to restrict ourselves to Canada. Both my colleague and I were a little shocked at this, since neither of us had even heard this was being discussed. I asked who the new person for the US was, and we then learned that it was a new hire that the CEO had taken a special interest in. Trying to be of good spirit, I offered to train the new person. There are many realities of the job that are not in the job description. CEO accepted and then brought in the new hire. In walks in a young lady who looks about 23 years old and wears an expression that she knows everything. She sits at the table and immediately makes it very clear that she wants nothing to do with us. CEO, Bob. New hire, Karen. My colleague, Jim. Bob. Welcome, Karen. We have just informed OP and Jim about the change in structure, and they are willing to give you the support you need to get yourself started. Karen and Bob both look at me. Me. Glad to have you aboard, Karen. I think both Jim and I have a lot of experience to share with you, and we are happy to do so. Perhaps it would be better in a separate meeting so we don't take the board's time. Karen. Thank you all. I have a lot of ideas about how I can streamline our department and new policies I can introduce that should save the company a lot of money in expenses. I'm very confused at this point. Karen is speaking as though she is my superior, and that is distinctly not what Bob spoke to us about. I can see some of the board members giving strained looks at this as well. Me. Bob, perhaps I misunderstood the new roles here. Would you please clarify? Bob. Sure. Karen is the new head of your department, and both you and Jim will answer directly to her. Board member. That isn't what we discussed or approved as a board. We weren't fully convinced of dividing the department, but this is completely against what we discussed. Karen. What did you discuss then? Board member. That your department would be divided between the US and Canada. OP and Jim would remain north of the border, and you would run the US. Karen. That's not what I was told, but I can work with that. As long as these two stay out of my way. indicating me and Jim. Jim and I are both shocked and insulted to be spoken of in this manner. We are both very good at our jobs and, before today, have never seen this woman in our lives. Bob: that settles it. OP, effective immediately, you and Jim are to have nothing to do with Karen. Do not interfere with her work at all. You are both to restrict yourselves to working within Canada only. With that, he ended the meeting and left the room, with Karen close behind him. Jim and I sat there stunned for a moment, and some of the board members came up to us to express their shock and sympathies about this. I had enough presence of mind to ask if we would get a written directive of this change, and was assured we would. Sure enough, both Jim and I got emails with the new directive from Bob by the end of the day. So, after sending an email to all of our US-based clients, advising them of the change and giving them the contact information of Karen, Jim and I made our way back to Toronto and reorganized ourselves for working within Ontario only. This meant much less traveling for us, so it gave us more room to breathe. Within a week, I was getting complaints from our US-based clients that Karen was not answering emails and missing appointments. I forwarded these emails to Karen and copied the entire board, including Bob. Another week later, I got a phone call from Karen, who sounded frantic but would not admit she needed help. She made pleasant conversation and then asked how I would handle a particular type of situation. I told her I'm really not interested in discussing work, as that might be seen as interfering in her work. Later that evening, I got a call from Jim, telling me he had the same conversation with Karen and handled it the same way. By the end of that month, I got a call from Bob asking if I would take over the entire department again. I politely told him no, since I didn't want to interfere with Karen and her role. For the next 3 months, I'm getting emails and phone calls from US clients asking if they can have me back as their contact. This confirms an idea that had been in my head. Jim and I had actually grown our client base in Ontario since restricting ourselves here. So, I had lunch with Jim one day and asked him if he wanted to go into business with me as partners, starting our own consulting firm. We couldn't provide everything our current company provided, but we could provide a high degree of professionalism for our specific field, and it seemed we had a ready-made client base. By the end of the lunch, he was on board, and we started the necessary steps to get ourselves set up. As soon as we were clear, we both submitted our resignations with explanations of why. The next time clients contacted us, we told them we no longer worked for the company. When they asked if we still worked in the field, we told them we had established our own firm and what services we offered. A month later, we had 60% of our US clients on board, and since the former company had no Canadian support at all, we had 80% of the Canadian clients. Within 2 months, we had 80% of the US and 90% of the Canadian clients. In the years since that time, our new company had grown enough that we have hired 7 new consultants. Jim and I find ourselves doing more office work than road work, and a lot of client courting. Our old company has had to stop offering the in-person troubleshooting, what our department did, and Bob was fired by the board. No idea what happened to Karen. Scaling Stories Corner. I think that's just karma. I don't think it was more so that the CEO didn't know what OP and Jim did in their department. He probably did, but he was clearly playing favorites with Karen to try and land her a better position. But she was clearly too inexperienced and had too much of an ego to get any sort of help from those who had been in the field before her. So she was setting herself up to fail. I think that can be a pretty common thing that happens to people who are still fairly young, but they get placed into a position they're not ready to handle from things like nepotism. Now, here are some of the top/relevant comments from the original post. Commenter 1 says, "What is a general troubleshooter?" OP says, "In the context of our business, think consultant who deals with everything." Commenter 2 says, "How were you able to keep the clients? You still had access to your work email after quitting? Or did the customers have your personal email?" OP says, "The nature of the job meant a lot of clients had my personal cell number. It was so they could get a hold of me in a crisis. So, when Karen wasn't answering their calls and they were in a crisis, they reached out to me." Commenter 3 says, "Great story and happy for your success. But I have to say, you are beyond lucky that your prior employer seems to have been idiots, and it sounds like the board was dealing with bigger issues to look into what you were doing. Not sure of Canadian law, but did you not have non-competes? Even if you didn't, I'm surprised they didn't sue you for tortious business interference. As a serial entrepreneur, I'll tell you, the legal system can really be used as a weapon. Be careful out there." OP says, "Appreciate the heads up. The board did have bigger issues. The CEO made a real mess of things, and the company is now worth about 1/3 of what it used to be. We were very careful with our legal steps and have every reason to believe we are in the clear. We did not actively solicit any clients, but only informed them we were no longer working with the previous company. Then the discussion went as normal. All said, you are correct. The law can be a bit of a minefield. OP says to another commenter, "We had all our contracts checked really carefully before we filed to start our own company. Our lawyer was surprised as well. All the consultants we hire have non-competes." Commenter 4 says, "Your company sounds rather large. I have to imagine there are no poaching policies set in place. Every place I've worked at had me sign agreements that I was not allowed to poach clients in any form." OP says, "Lol, not as large as we'd like. But yes, our non-competes are written in such a way to stop poaching." Commenter 5 says, "I'm guessing that the clients coming to you now don't count as poaching because they contacted you themselves?" OP says, "At this point, we are far enough from the departure that any new clients are from word of mouth and fall under fair competition. When we started out, we did not contact any of the company's clients. We only spoke to them when they contacted us. This was the advice of our lawyer. Even then, being careful not to offer our services until the client asked what we were doing now that we left the company. In this way, we avoided even the hint of poaching." Update 10 hours later. Because of interest expressed in the comments, I made a phone call to one of the board members I remained on friendly terms with. Here are some answers to questions. How did Karen get the job? Apparently, Bob had set up a business school scholarship out of his own money, which had put something like 6 or 7 students through business school. Karen was the latest graduate, and Bob wanted to give her a start in the business world. Was Bob sleeping with Karen? No clear answer was given, but Bob's wife divorced him shortly after he was fired from the company. Make of that what you will. What happened to Karen? Apparently, she got a job as middle management in a financial services company. Hopefully, she can still build a life for herself and has learned some important lessons. What happened to Bob? Last heard, he was a regional director for a large hotel chain. Hopefully, he also lands on his feet. Everyone deserves a chance to make a life for themselves. Some questioned why the board was there for this meeting. I honestly don't know, and neither did the board member I spoke with. It was one of their regularly scheduled meetings, and Bob added things to the agenda. Some questioned my use of non-competes, saying it's not nice. It's a normal reality in the business world. The oddity is that my old company did not have one. The non-compete I have my employees sign is not overly burdensome. It protects our intellectual property and professional contacts. It does not in any way restrict the employee's ability to work in the field. That said, Jim and I have both agreed that if an employee leaves us on good terms and reasonably asks to be released from the non-compete, we would oblige. Some inquired if we are still hiring. Unfortunately, we are not. We are taking a pause from expansion right now, as Jim's wife is dealing with cancer. I don't want Jim to worry about the office while taking care of his wife, so we have decided to maintain our size, which I can do with minimal input from Jim, until his wife is in remission, and he has a chance to rest and return his attention more fully to our company. Jim and I treat each other like family, so this is a natural step for us. Thank you all so much for your interest and the great feedback and discussion in the comments. Okay friends, so that concludes today's video. Leave a like and comment down below to let me know what you thought of it, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.